Hello everyone and welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan. Thank you for coming to my channel. A sigh of satisfaction and delight. I'm in front of the mother of all my fish tanks, the 135-gallon freshwater display. It's a heavily planted aquarium, obviously, you can see from this wide shot, and it's also a heavily stocked aquarium, which you can also see from this wide shot, which is one of the delights of a larger aquarium that's not tucked away in your fish room. This is in our dining room, which currently has some art supplies and what have you. My wife is a designer, and so she's utilizing the dining room table, but when we have family over or guests, they literally are sitting from where I'm standing, and that's what they see. So it's such a great piece of decor for your home. I'm backing into what is our living room. A little peek, and that's Chicago out there, the lakefront. So if you've got a sweet apartment and a spouse that is patient and great, she'll let you extend your aquarium hobby into the living space, provided you do a good job in maintaining said fish tank and not letting it become 135 gallons of janky, corrupted, fettered, and nasty, because that won't fly in this house. I mean, it's not gonna fly with me, but we always joke about our partners and how they view the hobby. And believe me, if you guys, as you guys know, and girls know, so I use partners both ways there, the one who's not in the hobby needs to have a reason to appreciate what you're doing in this hobby and not have it negatively affect their life in any way. And my wife being an interior designer, that means I'm doubly concerned about creating an aquarium in shared living space, especially, you know, everywhere this holds true for me, but especially in the living space. I think it needs to be living art, and that is what I honestly believe that this is. I mean, look at it. It's artificial in that it's a glass box filled with water and a self-contained ecosystem that needs a whole lot of managing, big and small, to maintain this plethora of life and to keep the water crystal clear and the parameters good and the fish happy, make sure they're not being aggressive towards one another and that they can cohabitate. I think I've done that. I think I've been able to accomplish, for the most part, in this aquarium. And I've talked about my trials, some tribulations I've had with disease, fish loss. But I think a lot of that's in my rear view mirror. Very few fish in here are new, and some grew up from small juveniles, and there are even babies now in this aquarium. Moving closer, I'll start with something maybe not quite as obvious at first look, but these dwarf neon rainbow fish, the Praecox rainbow. A lot of times when you see them in the store, they're little blasé silver fish about the size of a squished quarter, so a more oblong quarter. But when they grow up, like these two males here, just stunning. 3 males, and there's a female. Isn't it fun? The females are a little smaller, and they feature yellow on their finnage versus the orange glow. Generally speaking, males of this species are more common because they're more beautiful and they get bigger, but you gotta have females even if you're not breeding, in my opinion. Well, let me check that. You don't got to have females. Many people keep just the male, for example, of the Bosemani rainbowfish, this glorious creature here, because they're far more beautiful than the female. But it's my opinion that the fish are happier when both sexes are in the tank, and those males with the orange back will show off and flash for this more drab female here. And she's not ugly, it's just not the same, doesn't have that iconic orange or red and sometimes yellow back end. The caboose of these guys are stunning. I've got a couple different origination point Bosemanis, but I don't know, I forget, I have it written down, but it sort of doesn't matter to me. But what is apparent is there are different color morphs between the yellow, the red, and the orange in their back section. As some of you know, if you've been watching my videos, I had to add 2 angelfish, and we're looking at, this isn't the pair I added, but that marble angelfish got too big for the 22.5, so I put him in here, and he's holding his own with these wonderful OG angelfish, the longfin variety of the silver, the classic Scalare, and there's a stockier version. These 2 have spawned for me, and I've talked about that at length, but I have not seen that behavior in a while. This is the other angelfish I put in here, this beautiful longfin, who's now eagerly watching me film him or her, because as you know, most hobbyists know their fish quickly when they see their owners, their keepers, their caregivers. That usually means food, and they never understand this filming aspect of the hobby. So it's food or leave me alone, or stand a couple feet back. There are the teacup-sized Millennium rainbowfish, and look at that. Look at those 2 there. There's 3. They're schooling together. What an oddball, but so stunning. And look at that, how the light shimmers across that rusty orange, that burnt orange. Depending on the light, it's burnt orange, rust, and sometimes even just shows straight up red. I believe those are 3 males. I also believe, like the Bosemani, that the females are not nearly as illustrious. But there, I have 3 males and no females. I do not have room in this aquarium for any other fish, and that seems pretty obvious. There's the rare livebearers. You've got a couple fancy swordtails. Look at this person here, this guy. He may or may not be capable of spawning. The fancier veal tail, swordtails, the males, because of that flowy, soft finnage, unfortunately their sexual organs are flowy and soft, and the gonopodium doesn't function. That looks like a female there. Maybe not, I see a gonopodium. I don't know, I'm sorry. I did buy a couple of these fancy swordtails over a year ago at a swap because I was so captivated by them. There's the 3rd one. Almost like a beta fish, right? God, that one's getting older, so its fins are a little tattered, but that's not from anyone attacking it. That's just the natural progression and ultimately degradation of those long flowy fins. Same thing happens to a beta fish as it gets older. Now, as we've been filming, the oddball black molly, like that one there, and the other one to the left, upper left, I didn't put adults in here. I put babies in here to get eaten by these rapacious angelfish and rainbowfish, but some survived and they grew up into adults. And now that these adults, including this monster down here, add to the population for better and for worse. The good thing about mollies, other than how cool they are, jet black, they also earn their keep. They're as good an algae eater as any fish you can put in here, and for some algae, they're the best. You can make a case they're simply the best algae eater in this hobby. You really could. And you're looking at a fish tank that doesn't have a lot of algae, but it certainly has a ton of bio load, and maybe the mollies help out in that regard. The thing is, given the population mass here, I'd love to not have quite so many fish, but catching them out is crazy. The only fish I might be able to catch would be one I don't want to, and then I'm just stressing everyone out playing games with traps and nets. There's what they call gold dust molly with that flattering gold sheen on the top. Again, they were all put in here as teeny tiny fry when I was doing the fry grow out in my fish room. And a lot of the babies were immediately devoured as live food, but survival of the fittest, some made it down into these nooks and crannies. There is a Bolivian ram. There are 2 pairs, and they occupy this portion. There's another one. Not as stunning as the German ram, but they live longer and they're less aggressive. There's the 3rd one, and there's a 4th one. A lot of my plecos, I have different bristlenose, lemon. I have the lemon, blue eye, super red, calico, and regular, and they've spawned, and I see the little ones all the time, during feeding time in particular, and they come out and start eating. Along there you just saw a Coreodora. I don't think the camera, there's a bit of a coolie loach. I've got some Monstrous Amano shrimp in here. Obviously Neocaridina don't last very long. There is a lemon blue-eyed pleco. It doesn't have the red eye, so it's not an albino. They probably have albino in here as well. You see this is the cryptocorn, all these beautiful plants, so it makes finding the fish a little bit more challenging. I see an Otocinclus there on a stem. I saw, well, now we both see a long fin Plecostomus. That I definitely have juveniles of this in here, definitely. And there's a rabbit snail. It looks like they're pulling a suitcase across. Look at that. Isn't that fun behavior? You'd think God would have maybe made it a little easier for them, but it's a joy to watch. It's so unique. It literally is like dragging a suitcase. Like when you see someone getting kicked out or moved out, and they have all their belongings in an overstuffed suitcase and they're trying to drag it along the sidewalk. That's kind of a cruel metaphor, but that's what it reminds me of. This is all my Bucephalandra plant. It does flower for me. There's the beginning of a flower right there. The Anubias does have some spotted algae on it. There's an Amano shrimp. Great shot, great shot. Look at that guy. God knows how many of those are in here at this point. They don't spawn in here. I've seen them carrying tons of eggs, but as most of you know, those eggs cannot come to fruition in a freshwater system. They need brackish water. Blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other topic. I have the Harlequin rasboras and cardinal tetras, and they're living amidst the flowy jungle vale. There's a leopard strain in there, and straight up jungle vale. That rippled stem there, or leaf, is actually a cryptobalancea, which is one of my favorite cryptocorn. It mimics a vale in terms of its long flowy nature. but it's not a veil, and it can get purpley and red. And it can be a feature plant in a 10 or 20 gallon aquarium. A signature plant, maybe in lieu of a sword plant. This is pogo stem and octopus here. I pulled that from one of my other scapes. It's not growing the same way as it does in my other aquariums, but it's a neat place for security. It adds different color and texture. In the center here, I have sword plants. And in the beginning, I wedged them into the substrate that's located below these two monster pieces of driftwood behind the Sirius stone and black lava rock, which I've combined. And I did extra fertilization under there, but over time that has become depleted, and the sword plants will be the first that the plecostomus elect to devour if they become weak and flimsy or yellowing, and that has happened to me. But all things look pretty good. It's interesting, with springtime I got a lot of new growth from some of these plants, in particular the sword plants, but my floating plants have experienced sort of a natural, not die out per se, but they're just not as crazy breeding or breeding as they were. I fully expect with a water change or some sort of any kind of impetus, they'll be back to their super aggressive reproductive capability. It's sort of a relief for me. I don't want to lose that plant, but I had to take fistfuls of it out every time I did any maintenance. There he is shaking in the water flow. There's two, it's like he's having a seizure, right? Maybe he is. There back over the power head is a nearite snail, which I haven't seen one in a while in here, but voila. So this tank has CO2. On each corner I've got the largest Yardley diffuser and a 5-gallon cylinder below the tank next to the sump. So I've got two outflows on either side and two CO2 diffusers on either side. I can tell from the spot checker it's not as green as I'd like. You know, it's tough, especially if you don't go with the inline CO2. It's tough to really fill this tank properly with carbon dioxide. But since I'm not having challenges vis-a-vis the plants, there's a dwarf tiger lotus, and I'm not obsessed about it. The bubbles are at least 1 a second, maybe faster, and I could torque that, but you know, I'm okay. I'll look at it, but it is, you know, that's what the spot checker's for. These are Hygrophila agilia, a little bit more of a complex strain or rarer strain, not too much. I mean, they're $1 more on most of the websites if you can find it, and that's it. And if this was being hit closer to the light, which is way up there, 24 inches I'm guessing, it would curl up and behave a little bit more like a hedgerow. So these stems wouldn't be as tall, they wouldn't be as erect. They'd be folded in on one another and the leaves would be purplish red. That's the desired form for this, but this isn't acceptable. This is another form for this plant. It's just not as captivating to the eye. I bought this plant, and there's 3 more on this side, for some other purpose, but that other purpose didn't prove to be a worthwhile experiment for me, so I just placed them. And it's hard to find places in any of my aquariums, but I add them on either side of the dwarf tiger lotus. And they didn't come out of the substrate. And up at the front here, the substrate is the least nutritious. It's more sand and gravel. And then as we move back, you get the lava rock and the UNS contra soil and other, I think I have a clay-based soil as well as lava rock bag. So what I'm trying to say is all the nutrition is a few inches back. So I wasn't holding out a ton of hope for that, and I didn't care too much because this front part of the aquarium is where things can stay clean and clear. I don't do any gravel vacuuming, any. Do you see any junk on the ground? No. That's just because of the wonderful ability of a sump to circulate water, because I have all these denizens on the ground, tons of plants, and luck. I'm just fortunate that there's not like gunk building up in the corners and all that debris between the sand and gravel. For all the reasons that people talk about on YouTube, you know, the pros and cons of the father fish method, for example, dirted tanks, sand versus gravel. You know, one of the things, a primary thing folks are trying for the most part to avoid, it's not so much mulm, because in a blackwater system, mulm and detritus is desirable, but in a planted aquarium, as I said at the beginning of this video, in a living space in the dining room, unless you're a real pro, a blackwater tank's just not gonna do it for, you know, your cousin and your Uncle Bernie when they come over. They're gonna be like, why is that tank so dingy? Where's the colors? Where's the plants? So a super colorful community freshwater display tank fits the bill. Thank you for staying with me on this little tour of my 135-gallon freshwater display aquarium. I know I missed a bunch of things and I didn't talk about the sump, but I was able to highlight the relationship that the fish tank has in the living space and why it needs to be living art and not just one of my science experiments, which I love to do, but I keep those in the fish room. All right, everybody. As I like to say, always keep your hands in the tank, and ciao for now.